Hi, good morning, and welcome back to Create, Share, Inspire podcast. This is episode 533, and we're here live in Southwest Florida in my backyard. It's storming here this morning. I did try to get to the beach, but it's just too stormy to head down there. If you're joining me live, please say hello. I'll wait a few minutes before beginning to make sure people have a chance to pop over from pre-chat or getting notifications or however you show up to the podcast live in the morning. Hi Thea, happy Friday. Hi Judy. Hi Naomi. Yes, happy Friday everybody. Hi Cherie and Glory. Good morning Grace and Judy and Cherie and Lily, Barbara, Christine. Good morning everyone. Happy Friday. Glad you could make it to the live stream of our podcast. Hi Teresa and Barbara. Good morning Joe and Melissa and Thea. Hi Kathy. Oh yeah, it's Friday the 13th too. Hi Gay. Oh, we missed the full moon last night. So apparently last night was the last full moon of the decade. How cool is that? I guess we could be doing a lot of things the last of the decade right now, right? Hi, Diane and Grace. Oh, Barbara saw the full moon. Good for you. Yeah, I totally forgot. I worked really late last night and then I fell asleep. So, oh well. And now it's super stormy here this morning, so there's no way of seeing it, what's left. Cherie saw it earlier this morning. It must be clearer at your house. It's been storming here all morning. Super stormy. You can still hear the water dripping from the rain that just stopped. Not worth risking the beach with damaging my camera and my phone over that, so. My favorite tea that they serve at Starbucks, I found at the grocery store the other day. It's probably been there a long time, and maybe I've seen it there before, but I'm excited about it now. The Tazo Zen tea, which is lemongrass. It's a green tea with lemongrass and mint in it. I found it at the grocery store the other day, and just loving drinking it at home. It's always one of my favorites to get when I go to Starbucks because I don't drink coffee there. I only drink tea, and I've been so excited to be drinking Tazo Zen tea at home. Costs a fraction of the price, of course. I think I'm paying about 10 cents a tea bag this way. Cherie, it's your daughter's favorite tea too. There's something about lemongrass. In fact, when I lived in Israel, we called lemongrass something else. Oh gosh, what did we call it? Oh. Not going to remember at the moment, but we used to make our own not lemongrass. What was it called? It wasn't lemongrass. It was something like lemongrass. Wow, now I'm forgetting altogether, but it reminds me of something that I used to make fresh with fresh herbs in lemon verbena. That's what it was. But I forget what we called it in Hebrew. But anyway, we used to get fresh lemon verbena, and we used to steep the leaves for tea on. Oh my God, that was so good. And this kind of reminds me of that. I think lemongrass and lemon verbena are kind of similar in taste. Lily drinks ginger lemon. Ginger lemon's good too. Yes, Cherie, these colors do match the colors in my yard. This is, so the last couple of days we've been talking about gauge and how, and the different things to consider when substituting yarns for different projects. And so I wanted to bring an example this morning, and going forward, I think that there's lots of different ways that we can use examples and even do some demonstrations on the podcast for showing how to adjust your gauge or what to consider when you're taking a project for a thin yarn and converting it to a thick yarn, or vice versa. So I thought that I would take a current example of something I did very recently myself and shared the modifications in a blog post already on my website. So what I'll be talking about today, some of that information is listed in a link in the very top of the video description already. Isn't that great? I'm so prepared this morning. Anyway, so in the treble crochet stitch tutorial, the pattern that's included, uh-oh, it's kitty quake time. No, baby Bjorn, no kitty quakes. I did a very simple treble crochet shawl in Be So Tender yarn, which is the #4 worsted weight yarn, and I did it with a size K or 6.5 millimeter crochet hook. And it turned out to be, I don't know, somewhere roughly 500 yards of yarn. I don't know, I don't remember the yardage, you can look it up. But it was worked. But the key to remember here is that I did a #4 worsted weight, and I did a size K or 6.5 millimeter crochet hook. Then I did the same exact shawl in a #2 sport weight yarn, Be So Sporty. But when I wanted to do this one, I didn't want to use the same size crochet hook because I felt like a K or 6.5 millimeter crochet hook was really going to make the #2 sport weight yarn way too loosey-goosey for what I wanted to do. So if I wanted to do this exactly the same, take the different size yarn and just plug it into same size hook and same stitches, I would get I would be using roughly the same yardage, but I would be getting a much looser fabric. I wanted something that was a crochet hook that was a little more appropriately sized to the thinner yarn, which meant I was going to get a smaller gauge. Notice how much smaller my stitches are between these two. Let's see if I can drape this one over one shoulder and drape this one over the other shoulder. So you can see how incredibly different these fabrics are and how much smaller the stitches are. And that's because I ended up going with a G hook or 4.5 millimeter crochet hook. And by doing a smaller crochet hook, I got smaller stitches. And when I got smaller stitches, I needed more of them to create the same size fabric. So by changing the yarn thinner and changing the hook to a smaller hook, I needed more yardage if I wanted it to be the same size. Does that make sense? Well, wait a second, and then we'll talk about it in the reverse as though we started with this one. Wouldn't either of them make great cardigans? Now, if you just see where I'm cut off on the camera, you can almost pretend like that's a raglan corner. Let's see, I get this one right. There we go. They look like two halves of different cardigans. That would be fun. Thank you, Lily. They are both nice. I love both of them. Okay, so let's pretend we started with this one. Let's pretend we started with the Be So Sporty #2 sport weight yarn. We started with the G7 or 4.5 millimeter crochet hook, and we did however many rows we did here to make this size shawl. And let's say after that, Raina, can we come up with a new gauge according to, yeah, you're going to have a new gauge when you change yarn and change hook size for sure. So let's say we started here and then I said, hey, I want to redo this shawl in worsted weight yarn. And I was like, worsted weight yarn, #4. I probably don't want to use a 4.75 millimeter hook. If I want to do this loose and drapey, I might want to do this on a 6.5 millimeter hook. So I'm going to go up in hook size. So it's a top-down shawl. So I know don't really have to worry about the gauge to begin with, but as I'm making it, my stitches are larger, my rows are longer, and my width and my length of my shawl are bigger row for row than it was on this one. So now I have to ask myself, am I going to follow the pattern exactly as written and do this many rows, or am I going to make decisions based on my gauge and finish this one in less rows to create the same size? If I were to do the larger gauge project following this pattern and do it exactly as written, I'll use roughly the same amount of yarn, but it'll end up being much bigger than this one. If you wanted it to be closer in size, you would use less rows, which would therefore use a little less yarn, but of a thicker yarn with a bigger hook. Does that make sense? So it depends on whether you want to make something the same size or the same gauge. If you wanted them to be the same size, this one will take less rows and less yarn. This one will take more rows and more yarn if you're using appropriately sized hooks for the different weights of yarn. I'll wait a second and see if that's making sense. So thinner yarn, smaller hook, takes more rows and more yardage of yarn to make the same size shawl as a thicker yarn and a larger hook for this one. This takes less yardage and less rows to create the same size than the project with the thinner yarn and the smaller hook. Wow, it'd make a cute poncho too, or a cape. You're welcome, Cherie and Pamela. I'm glad that that's making sense. Okay, so now, so that's the one that I have an actual side-by-side comparison with. So that was the first one I thought would be a good one to start with. Now, I've gotten a lot of questions about this new beautiful scarf, the Serafina scarf. This is the new scarf that's worked in Be So Sporty yarn, Be So Sporty Bling yarn. It's a one ball project in Be So Sporty Bling, and it's called the Serafina scarf. Now for this one, I've been getting lots of questions. What if I want to make this in a different weight yarn? And that's a great question. Let's think about the construction of this one first. This is a lengthwise made scarf. We start with a long chain, the length that we want our scarf to be. This scarf goes boop, 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 boop. This is about 60 some inches long. So this is how long I made my original chain, okay? Now, I did this in a G hook, 6mm crochet hook, I think, or maybe it was an H and a 5mm, maybe it's a 5mm. Let's say I did the H 5mm crochet hook, Be So Sporty Bling yarn, one ball project, so it's roughly 300 yards, and it's done lengthwise so that determines our length. Let's say you wanted to make this in worsted weight yarn, a number 4. Now, if it's a yarn that you like the way it works up in an H hook, then not much is going to change, and you'll get roughly the same size scarf, and you'll get roughly the same yardage, but it'll be a little chunkier and a little thicker and maybe even a little less drapey. If you bumped up the hook size with a thicker yarn and you're making your beginning chain will become longer. So you have to decide, do I want it to be that much longer, or do I want it to be the length this one was? And then if you're deciding to adjust the size of the scarf at that point, you'll have to take into consideration the multiple. This pattern has a multiple of 11 plus 5. The pattern's available on my website. There's a video tutorial for it here on my YouTube channel. It's called the Serafina scarf. It's also available in 52 crochet gifts, so if you've already pre-ordered the book, you already have this pattern. But if you wanted to make it into a larger scarf, or you wanted to use a larger yarn, you would, let's see, I'm saying two different things now. If you wanted to adjust the length of the scarf, you need to add or subtract in multiples of 11, okay? So if you're using a thicker yarn, and let's say you wanted to do it in Be So Tender yarn, which is number 4 worsted weight, and use that size K 6.5mm crochet hook. If you do the same exact number of chain that we did on this one, it's going to be much longer. If you like that, great. do that. If you want it to be this length, you'll have to subtract by multiples of 11 in your beginning chain, and then the rest of the pattern you work exactly as is. It will be larger though, because you've increased your yarn thickness and you've increased your hook size. If you make it exactly the same size, the same number of chains, which will end up being bigger, but the same number, you'll use roughly the same yardage of yarn, but in worsted weight yarn. If you adjust the size and reduce the number of chains, you'll use somewhat less yarn depending on how much less you subtract from the original pattern. Does anybody have any questions about that? So if you're making the pattern as is, it will be the same yardage, but it will be much bigger. And if you adjust the pattern to shrink the multiples down, you'll use slightly less yardage, but it will still be worsted weight yarn, not sport weight yarn. So it will be chunkier and thicker too. Hi Picasso, hi Erica. Picasso is Erica's parrot that likes to watch the podcast with her in the morning. How funny and cute is that? Hi guys. We have two kitties joining us. Oh, you're welcome, Cindy. Yeah, Cindy listed. This is great because that's one of the reasons that the Facebook group for Create, Share, Inspire podcast is so great on Facebook, is that it's a place where you can post your photos and other people can either share with your success if you're showing finished objects, or if you're showing progress photos and you're not sure if yours looks the way it's supposed to look. Someone posted a photo of their Phoebe pouch last night and didn't know if hers looked right. And I had the ability then, if I see the photo, to tell her that it does look right. And other people that have made the same patterns can chime in on stuff like that too. I think it's really great. Yesterday I had some people help me answer questions on YouTube, which I thought was awesome too. Okay, Jill's making the Serafina scarf in Be So Fine yarn with a size E hook. Okay, great. So this is an example of going in the opposite direction. Wonderful. Thanks for mentioning that, Jill. So if she does the same size beginning chain, her scarf is going to be smaller. If she wants the same size scarf, she's going to have to add in multiples of 11 to make a thinner yarn with a 3.5 millimeter crochet hook equal the same length as a thicker yarn with a 5 millimeter crochet hook. So whatever the starting chain is, she will add in multiples of 11 to get the length that she wants, and then she will continue on with the scarf, and she will end up using more yardage than the original pattern called for, because she's working more stitches. No, Melissa, there wasn't a podcast yesterday. I mentioned earlier in the week that I'm only doing 3 days a week until I feel better. I'm having a slow time getting over my chest cold or head cold or whatever there is, whatever congestion's still going on here, and just decided to only do 3 days a week until I'm feeling better. Uh-oh, we've got a kitty fight behind us. Oh, dang it. Becker does not like to be on camera. I have been releasing new videos though, so hopefully you've been enjoying the new tutorial videos. I released 2 more yesterday. What ones did I release yesterday? Oh goodness, I already forget. Maybe someone else can help me out. So I've released quite a few videos this week. Oh yeah, the coasters we released yesterday, and I think Minka Cowl. I think this one. So I released the coasters video and the Minka Cowl. This one's one of my favorites. The headband was 2 days ago, I think, Lily. Yeah, the headband and the Grace headband and the Serafina scarf videos were 2 days ago. And then yesterday we released the Minka hooded cowl and the Faith coasters. Look at how cute that looks. Ah, I love Grace started this one yesterday. Wonderful. I'm so glad you like it. I can't get over how pretty that fringe looks. I love it. Honestly, you could put this on any cowl. Now that once you learn how to do this, this shouldn't be the only time we put fringe on a cowl, right? I think we could do this on lots of other projects now. And then I'll show you that it is long enough that you can wear it up as a hood when it's super cold outside. I love that you have that option with something that just making the hood longer so that you could do that. Imagine that under your coat. How cozy would that be? And it's still loose enough that it won't really mess up your hair too bad. And then once you take the hood back down, it's just got all those extra folds of being a little longer and being a super drapey yarn. It just, oh, all those folds are so beautiful. And they stand up on your neck, so it's just so cozy. Oh man, I could wear this all day. Sometimes I do. Yes, it's so light but warm. I love it. Thanks, Grace. Love how that turned out. So here's another project that's done in a #1 fingering weight yarn. If you wanted to do it in a thicker yarn, you would need to consider if you're doing the same hook size. You would probably want to go up in hook size though. This one's done on a 4mm hook in a #1 fingering weight yarn. If you wanted to do this in a worsted weight yarn or something much thicker, you would need to probably do a larger crochet hook, and by doing so you will adjust your gauge, so you would want to pay attention to the multiple of the pattern, and unless you wanted to make this much wider, which you could, and in a chunkier yarn, maybe this would be pretty as a much wider project. But if you wanted it the same size, you'd need to reduce your starting chain by a multiple of the stitch pattern multiple. And then that will affect your, you could do it in Be So Baby yarn, Christine. Yes, that's a DK weight #3 yarn, and this is a #1 fingering weight yarn. So you'll probably want to do it in a thicker hook size, which means it'll either be a little bit bigger, or if you adjust the gauge, you could make it the same size. But I would, if I did Be So Baby yarn, probably do it on an H hook or 5mm hook, and it would just take a little more yardage, and it would be a little bit bigger because you're using thicker yarn. But yes, you could definitely do this in Be So Baby yarn instead, for sure. You'll just need to pay attention to the yardage because the yardage is different on yarns as well. So this one, this ball of yarn has 590 yards in it. Be So Baby has roughly 140 yards in it. So you'll need to pay attention to the yardage that's written on the pattern and do the math to figure out how many balls you'll need. So it might end up being a 4-ball project instead of a 1-ball project. But it's a different yarn, different yardage, and all that stuff. That's the other thing to consider. Something being called a 1-ball project is arbitrary if you're changing yarn, because the yarn could be put up in a different yardage than your original yarn. A lot of my yarns are really high yardage, which is fun to call them 1-ball projects, but if you're substituting something, let's say like Be So Baby yarn, that's significantly less yardage for a smaller ball, you'll have to consider how many balls of yarn you'll need. So just pull out the calculator on your phone, and however many yards you need, divided by however many yards are in the ball of yarn that you're looking to substitute with, you'll divide that large number, the total yards, by how many yards are in the given ball. So 590 is the number of total yards, divided by 140, the number of yards per ball, and you would, whatever that number is, if it ends up being a fraction, like let's say it's 3.5462, if it's not a perfect number, you'll always have to go up, because if it's 3 and change, you'll have to buy 4 balls of yarn to make up that difference. I'm just throwing numbers in the air. These aren't actual numbers. Jo used Be So Soulful for her cowl. Okay, so she used a #2 sport weight yarn for a #1 fingering weight yarn pattern, which is not too far off. She may have even used the same size crochet hook, but the yardage is different on that yarn than this yarn. So this is 590 yards a ball. That yarn is approximately 315 yards a ball. So she would need 2 balls to make this project. Thanks, Judy. And Joe. All right, so where were we? Oh, we were talking about Joe used Be So Soulful yarn for this pattern that I made it in Be So Toasty yarn. Be So Toasty yarn is a #1 fingering weight yarn, and she made it in Be So Soulful, which is a #2 sport weight yarn. So her yarn is thicker and has about 300 yards per ball. This yarn is much thinner and has about 590 yards per ball. So to use a different yarn like that, she's going to adjust how many balls of yarn she needs and may or may not adjust her gauge. If she uses the same size crochet hook, it'll probably be close to the same size, but her fabric will be thicker and a little more dense. Or she has the choice to make her crochet hooks bigger to create a looser and more drapey fabric. It will never look exactly the same, but she can get different looks based on those different choices that she makes for adjusting a pattern with a different size yarn. Does anybody have any other questions about that? These are great conversations to have and great real life examples to share too. Plus you get to hear everyone's experiences of what it was like working up a pattern with a different yarn. Thanks, Cherie. Hi, Becker. You don't want to be on camera, I know. Thanks, Thea. Good, I'm glad, Cherie. So anytime you have questions about, hey, I like this pattern, but I want to work it in this yarn instead, just share it. Oh, are we going to get a little view of Becker? Hi. Did you want to come say hi? Here's Becker. Just for a second. Not for long. You gonna stay for a second? He never comes up during the podcast. He's been very needy before the podcast started though, so I had a feeling he was gonna possibly come. Oh, give me some kisses. Hi. You know I like to kiss your belly. Do you want down? Do you want down? Do you want down? You're not sure yet? You ready? Okay, go ahead. How cute is he, huh? They're both 13 pounds, Lily. He's a little bit heavier than his brother. Bjorn has longer limbs, but is skinnier. Becker has shorter limbs, but is fuller in the belly. But they both weigh exactly 13 pounds each. And what are you anxious to start, Barbara? I missed that conversation. I'm guessing you're getting ready to start one of these patterns. Oh, the Minka, wonderful. It's so easy. Oh, it's so easy. Once you get going, it's so easy. Oh, here's another pattern that we did the video for the other day. I've seen a lot of great comments from people who have started this one. If you haven't watched this video yet, I highly recommend it. This is showing you how to make these tiny little tiles and join them to tiles as you go without cutting yarn. So fun. So fun. And once you get the hang of it, it's fun to do for so many different types of projects. Imagine doing a blanket and just going on and on and on and making those to make something large. I think the practice of it would be so fun. Yes, Joe, you need to watch the tutorial. You're going to love it. And it helps you to recognize the video as well. Hi, Jason. So when you watch the video for this one, it really helps you to understand how to read the chart, because the chart for something that changes direction a lot would be a more advanced chart than, say, a really simple chart. So I think that it would be I highly recommend watching the video to understand how to read the chart as well as how to work in multiple directions like this. But once you get it, you're going to love it. It's so awesome. And again, so many different things you could make with it. Here's another video, the Grace head warmer we just did a video on. This one is done in a multiple of 6 stitches. So if you wanted to make this in different sizes, you would just need to adjust the number of stitches at the beginning of the first round by a multiple of 6. And then you could make this in multiple sizes. I think people have doubled the yarn. This was done in 1 ball of Be So Baby. I heard some people say that they did 2 balls of Be So Baby held together to create a thicker headband. And then again, you would want to adjust your gauge to make sure you're getting the right circumference. But how cozy does that sound? Hopefully we'll see more of those photos in the Create, Share, Inspire group on Facebook. Oh, is it baby Bjorn's time? Hi, baby. Another big baby. Does anybody have any more questions? Do you want it down? Want it down? Thank you, Barbara. I love my fur babies too. Yes, Bjorn has white paws and Becker does not, correct. When will I be back on? Monday. Today's Friday, so we'll do the podcast again on Monday, and I'll probably release some new video tutorials for 52 crochet gifts over the weekend, and probably have week 8 patterns released for 52 crochet gifts. The new download will be out next week as well. Lots of exciting stuff to share with you guys coming soon. And then we'll have new video tutorials. I think the Julie hat is going to be my next video tutorial. Love this flower petal brim at the front of the hat. So excited to show you guys this one. You can see how cute it looks on. And see how cute those flower petals look. So it's all done in popcorn stitches around a foundation oval. That's how we start the hat. And then we work up in rounds and then do some decreasing at the top. Super easy to do and definitely unusual. You may never have done a hat quite like this before. So this will be a really awesome video tutorial to show you. This one is done in Be So Cozy yarn, which is number 4 worsted weight. And I'll be doing that, probably be making that, start making that video later today. Don't know when it will be released, but sometime between now and Monday. Does anybody have any other questions? Oh, I did want to mention that I've continued with the book bundles. So if you wanted to get a 7-book bundle of all of the Create, Share, Inspire notebooks, you can find that in the books section of my shop on my website. I took down the Black Friday sale page, but I kept the book bundle sales, so you can get the 7-book Create, Share, Inspire notebook bundle on discount at my website, and you can still get the craft book bundle as well, so you can get Motif Magic, Layers Knit, Layers Crochet, and 80 Handmade Gifts. You can get a bundle of all 4 of those on discount as well. Those will come autographed. And so if you wanted to give any of these books as gifts, you could split up the bundles and give them to different people. Or if you wanted to keep them all for yourself, they would also be at a discount now as well. And you can find those in the bookstore on my website. I've also, what am I eating this morning? I haven't eaten anything yet, but I'm going to eat some oatmeal that I made overnight. I make overnight oatmeal with coconut milk, oatmeal, dried unsweetened coconut, and frozen mixed berries, and I put all of it in the fridge and let it soak up overnight. I make a big batch of it every 3 days, and then we eat it for breakfast for a few days. Hi, Joe. Yes, Melissa, it is very good and so easy, and I love the fact that I can just take a bag of frozen berries and dump it on top and just throw it in the fridge. No, it's not cooked at all, Barbara. It's just soaked in the fridge. So I take raw or dried oatmeal and I put it in a container. I pour over some unsweetened coconut milk. I add some dried unsweetened coconut to it. I'll add chia seeds to it. And then I mix all of that together, and then I dump frozen berries on top. Don't do anything to them, and throw it in the fridge. And overnight, the berries thaw, and the oatmeal soaks up all the flavors of everything. Oh, and I put cinnamon on it too. Maybe I should do that in the next cooking live. So easy. There's no cooking. There's no mess. It's just dump and let it do all of its sitting in the fridge, and it's so good. And so healthy too. Okay, yes, I'll show it the next time we do the cooking live because it is so easy to do. It takes 5 minutes to prepare, and then breakfast is done for the two of us for 3 days. I just buy whatever oatmeal, Linda. I don't even do anything fancy with the oatmeal. I'm sure you could buy fancier oatmeal. I just buy the rolled oats. Just the plain rolled oats. But I think adding chia seeds makes it super healthy too. So it's chia seeds, unsweetened coconut, and dried oats, non-dairy milk, cinnamon, and then I dump a bag of frozen berries on top. That's it. Yeah, I'll show it to you next time we do a cooking live. We'll probably do cooking live again next week. Lily does hers with cinnamon. That's great. Joe, this is the Minka hooded cowl. It's one of the newest crochet patterns, also one of the newest video tutorials here on YouTube as well. And it's done with 1 ball of Biso Toasty yarn, which is my wool and bamboo blended #1 fingering weight yarn. It's a 1 ball project. Okay, would anybody like to pick a number between 1 and 7, and we will grab a quote? Number 3. Okay, so we'll grab this one. Ooh, I like this one. This is Benjamin Disraeli. Man is only great when he acts from passion. I love it. Enthusiasm is definitely the way I roll. I always follow whatever I'm most excited about. And I really think that it shows in your finished work when you've really been enthusiastic and excited about it versus when you haven't. Always follow your passion. I love that. So thank you, Benjamin Disraeli. Man is only great when he acts from passion. Love it. Always follow what you love. And if you don't know what you love, meditate until you figure it out. That's the best advice I could give anybody, is if you don't know what you're passionate about, calm your mind and you will figure it out. Sometimes I think there's just so much going on around us that it's hard to stay focused, and that's where meditation is one of the most powerful tools that you can possibly use. That and gratitude. So that's why having journals to write down what you're grateful for is so therapeutic and so helpful with all parts of your life. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend a few minutes here with me. I hope you enjoyed chatting with me and everyone else here, and all of the information we shared on yarn substitution and mixing and matching patterns and different yarns, and all of the details that go along with that. If you want to see some of the yarn substitution information that I have shared for the Trinity shawl, the one done in worsted weight Biso tender yarn and the one done in Biso sporty #2 sport weight yarn, there is a link to a blog post at the top of this video description where you can find more information about what I did between those two patterns. Let us make time to create, share, and inspire today and every day. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and I'll see you on Monday. Bye.